It is week 2 of GarbAugust, and it was historical garbage week. I'm in my Oscar the Grouch shirt because who loves garbage more than Oscar? And I finished my second book of garbage, the Tarnsman of Gore, first in the notorious Gore series by John Norman that had 2 awful movies made of it. The second one worse than the first one. The first one was just called Gore, because I know they didn't want to have to explain what a Tarnsman was in the title. And the second one is called Outlaw Gore, which is what the book is called too. And the second one is just horrifically, stupidly bad and hilarious. And if you've ever watched Mystery Science Theater, you will know that movie very well. They even do a parody song of all the, like, trashy stuff in it in the middle of that episode of Mystery Science Theater. And I'm going to tell you, I can't hate this book. This book is so good-naturedly stupid. I can't hate it. So much so that I've bought the next 2. It is about this guy with the really ridiculous name of Tarl Cabot, which becomes an issue in the movie, The Outlaw of Gore, because no one watching it can figure out what this guy's name is because it's so weird and they don't really explain what it is. So much so that at one point I think somebody even says, is his name Paul? Is it Carl? They can't figure it out. It is Tarl Cabot. He is a history professor of some sort that is over in America. He goes out hiking in the woods, and his long, mysteriously lost father is somehow able to send him this message that explodes on reading, that he needs to come back to this counter planet of Gore. It's like I guess it's an alternate reality. I can't really tell, but he is then magically sucked into the world of Gore, which is this barbarian-ish world, which is clearly John Norman writing a self-insert fanfic here. And again, it is so good-naturedly stupid, I can't hate it. This book takes a lot of flack, mainly because I think it was written during, let me see the copyright date on this one, 66. So this was the kind of height of the feminist women's lib movement at this point in time. So having a book where one of the clearly main fantasies is about tying up women, this was probably not going to go over great with your more politically forward people at the time. Again, this is just this guy's kink. This is not really, I can't find anything really harmful in this at all. There's maybe one scene that I was like, okay, you didn't need to put that scene in there. But everything else is just sort of so stupidly harmless. Because Tarl goes to this planet of Gore, and he finds out his father actually is hundreds of years old, and it's not really explained very well. It's just sort of weirdly kind of thrown in there. And of course, Tarl is the best at everything he does. He's the best swordsman who has ever been on Gore. He's the best spear thrower who's ever been on Gore. He can ride the Tarns the best. Tarns are these big, huge birds that they ride around. He can ride the Tarns better than everybody on Gore, and he has the coolest, fastest Tarn, of course. And he has the most beautiful woman on Gore, who is the daughter of the most powerful man on Gore, of course fall in love with him. He escapes about 3 or 4 executions in the stupidest ways possible. It's not even really him. He just sort of stupidly ends up getting out of these executions in every weirdly conceivable way. He befriends and becomes best friends with, like, the biggest badass on Gore. This is the most shameless self-insert Mary Sue I have ever... People talk about Twilight. It's this one. It's this one. You can tell John Norman is, like, living his fantasies through this book. And Yes, there is a lot. I've heard a lot about the fact that this series has a lot of bondage elements. There's a lot of rope. There's a lot of rope and chain. There's an inordinate amount of rope and chain involved in this. But again, it is done in such a, I almost want to say PG way, that I'm not, you can't you can't really get mad. And the people who are getting mad over it, which was from back in the day, get mad over the stupid plot before you get mad over what this dude's kink was. Because John Carter Mars series, it was nudity. Like, that one was just like constant nudity. No one talks about that one, but I always hear about this one. I think because the horrible movies that were made and just kind of the general weirdness of some of it. And I can't fault it. I can't. It's awful. Don't get me wrong. It's awful. It's an awful series, but I was never bored reading it. I was never being like, ugh, I've got to finish this book, which is what I felt for The Abominable. It was never anything like, I absolutely hate this book. I can't believe that it really was just written in the nonsensical wish fulfillment way somebody wrote. And he's actually not really a bad writer. Plot, terrible, because it's clearly a self-insert. But the actual, like, writing and moving along of action and different things, he's pretty good. I've read worse modern ones that I have been bored by and have felt like there was too much exposition. He possibly has too little exposition, because you're like, I don't understand how any of this works. But you know what? He's going on with it, and there's yet another large bird to ride somewhere. But they have these things called homestones, where each city has this homestone, and it's like this good luck totem, I guess, that if you lose your homestone, the city just goes into chaos, and the person, whoever is ruling the city, is executed or thrown out of power or whatever, because he's lost the luck of the city. And of course, Tarl gets involved in this plot to take the homestone of this huge sort of empire being built in Gore. That he successfully takes that homestone. His plan, which was not the plan of all the dudes in the city he's coming from, Koraba, it's not their plan. He comes up with his own plan, and of course it works, because he's Tarl. He's Tarl Cabot. He is the coolest guy who has ever been cool on Gore. And the whole... And you can tell the author's intentions a lot of times when they're writing, and kind of what their attitudes and feelings about stuff can be. And you can even tell this author is just... He knows a lot of what he's saying is not really societally acceptable. With all this, like, tying people up and this subjugation thing and all this sort of stuff. You can tell he knows that. Because he, like, throws lines in that his main character is saying about, like, I hate how the women on Gore are treated, and this proud woman needs to be, she's not going to be subjugated in this way. But then there's also an element of, well, when in Rome, what are you going to do? It's just Gore. This is how they operate. And guess I'm just going to have to go along with all these chains and ropes. There's just, he knows, the author knows that this is, and he's just desperately trying to make an effort to somehow make this acceptable in the plot. You can tell it's stupid, and it is kind of fun, and just, it made me want to go back and watch the Mystery Science Theater version of this again, because the whole thing is just ridiculous, and it's written ridiculously, and there's just, I just can't find an element of malice to it so much. Just like Naked Came the Stranger, there was a definite unpleasantness, a definite not niceness, some genuine hateful stuff kind of slid in just from certain authors. You could kind of tell had some general, very unpleasant feelings about some different things that I was like, ooh, you kind of let that slip out there, didn't you? This one, this is just a dude with a rope kink. I I can't I can't get mad at it. It's too good-natured to be. He knows it's like a little kid who's gotten caught and it's just like, oh, gore. That's just how things are on Gore. Imagine. And then at the end of the book, Charles just gets thrown back into his normal life, and he's like, "Oh, was it all a dream?" But no, I woke up on the mountain that he went camping on. That's where he fell into this alternate universe and whatever. It's not well explained. Let's just put it that way. We just like go headfirst in this with very little knowledge and hold on for our dear lives in hopes that something gets explained as we go through. Not much does. You kind of can figure out a few things as you go. But man, for historical trash, this was fun. It was. I don't want to say nothing wrong with it because it's trash. So inevitably it has something wrong with it. But it was, if you like trash and you like pulp and you like trashy fantasy books, this one you really can't go wrong with because it's just so ridiculous. It's like hating a really stupid puppy. You can't. It's just dumb and fun, and clearly if there was a fanfiction.net, this dude would have been writing it up back in the day, because that is really all this is. This is like a Conan self-insert fan fiction is what this feels like. That is what this feels like. And the only way he even describes Charles is that he's a redhead, like a bright redhead, and then never really describes him physically much from there. So you're left with this howdy-doody looking dude in your mind who's just doing all this stuff and is just getting all the girls and being the coolest person on earth. But I just have this image of him as howdy-doody through the whole thing. So if you are not offended by somebody's weird fetish getting into their book and becoming an integral part of the plot, go ahead and read the Tarnsman of Gore, because it's dumb fun. And I haven't read a pulp fantasy that I've enjoyed as much as this one, weird kinks aside. So my second week was a lot more fun than the first. Next week is Anything Goes, so I'm reading a trashy nonfiction that is it's called The Case of the Manacled Mormon, and it really was something that happened in England, and I do know the case, and I know what happened, and the whole thing just turned into a media circus because of what actually happened, and who was the people who were involved the woman was such a character that it just turned into, like, it was the highest level of tabloid trash when it went through, just because of everybody who was involved in the stupid thing. And very unfairly for the victim, I feel, because he really was victimized. I don't know how you get around that, but because of what the crime was, it turns into this really weird situation about women and assaulting men, and the whole double standard we still kind of have. So that is the second book or the next book of trash that I will be reading. Will be the Manacled Mormon, and then we're moving on to the WTF week of the strangest trash you can read, and that will be Go Ask Alice, which, woof, that is not only strange, that is offensive on the highest level, from the author, not the book itself. It's the author that's the problem with that whole situation. So moving on